Hello and welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you are listening to episode number 17. With deer hunting season firmly in our rearview mirror, Phil and I will share some of our thoughts from the 2016 season, what we've learned from this year, what we're looking forward to in 2017, and an embarrassing story of a run-in between me and Phil's dad. All right, welcome everybody to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 17. Today, it is going to be a Phil and Clint BS session, if you will. We'll try to keep things deer related as much as possible, but Phil and I haven't had a chance to really talk a whole lot. Really since the new year, we've had a lot of great guests come on, and it's kind of cut into some of our time to chit chat. So we have a lot of things to kind of catch up on, all the things we've experienced from 2016 and all the stuff we want to look forward to in 2017 and where we're hoping that year will take us. But before we start to dive into the goods, so to speak, I'm joined as always by my esteemed colleague, Phil Marchek. What is happening, sir?
What is happening? Everything's happening, my brother. I am expecting a new addition in a few weeks. I'm mid-basement renovation, so it's pretty chaotic on my end.
Yeah, 'tis the season. It seems like, I don't know, the holiday season always seems crazy busy, and then I don't know if it's just the amount of fatigue following the entire holiday season. It's just like the next 2 months is just, I don't know, I feel like they're almost as tiring, if not more tiring, just trying to catch up.
It's the holiday letdown, and also deer season's officially over. So
deer season is officially over for us. Yeah, it ended yesterday. I have a quick story. Speaking of the holiday letdown, so my wife and I have a saying for February, right? So our saying is February is for relaxing. Like that's kind of our mantra, and we try to live into it.
It's pretty basic.
Yeah, February is for relaxing. Where I got this kind of lesson in life, I guess you will, is it was when I worked in the city and I was taking the train home, and as you know, as a city dweller and city worker, you see some of the most interesting people you'll ever see on the train. So I used to make a habit of finding just like the weird, interesting ladies, men, whatever you want to call certain folks, and take pictures of them and then share them with Megan whenever I would get home, of just like some of the weird stuff I would see on the train. Like, you know, sometimes I'd get to the train station, there'd be a lady in her bare feet in the gross train station doing yoga in the train station, among, you know, the entire rush hour crowd.
Of course.
And I was on the train the one day, and there was a guy who was kind of animated. He was one of those types of guys who, when he's on his cell phone in public, talks really loud because he wants to make sure everyone is aware that he's on the phone, you know, and wants them to hear part of his conversation. So he's on his phone talking really loud and kind of giving you a glimpse into his life. And he's lamenting the fact that, you know, if I was piecing the story together correctly, his girlfriend who was there with him in the train was sitting next to him, and he's now moved from talking on the phone really loud to now talking to the guy that's sitting in front of him on the train, that he doesn't know all this stuff about his life, to where it's like he just got his girlfriend out of rehab, and they both just got fired from their job because he told their boss that he was ignorant, and then they just like on and on and on, like all this stuff, right? And so then
this is like a roller coaster of bad decisions.
Right. And it's like, hey, you know, some people, bad stuff happens, and that stinks. You know, it's like you hope everything works out okay, but it's like you still don't have to broadcast it, right? It's probably just not great to kind of put it all out there for everybody. So then his phone rings and he picks it up, and he was talking to whomever called him about whatever living arrangement he and his girlfriend had at the moment, you know, if they were looking for a place or whatever the case was. And he gets to this point where I was kind of like picking up, like the guy was kind of asking, like, well, what are you guys going to do? Because now you don't have a job or whatever. Like, you both lost your job today, since he told them their boss was ignorant, or told his boss he was ignorant. So I was picking up to the guy. I was like, so are you looking for work? And he was like, yeah, no, you know, I'm kind of looking for work, man. And he was like, you know what? It's February, man. He's like, man, February is really just for relaxing anyway. So I'll probably just start looking in March. So I picked up the mantra that February is for relaxing from that gentleman, and I try to live into it every February.
I'll tell you what, I think, if you take his lead, I think you're going in the right direction, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I give it a good go every February, but it doesn't seem to pan out for me. But how was your weekend, man? What's shaking in the Marchek household?
Yes, this weekend was basically, contractors were in, working on the basement. We were doing some cleaning around the house. Really nothing hunting related, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially because it was the last and final weekend for the extended season in Pennsylvania, or at least in our WMU.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna try to get out this yesterday.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
It didn't happen. Yeah, because I remember you sent me a text last weekend. Because I got out last week on
man, you snuck out.
I did. I snuck out one more weekend. I thought I was done that final weekend that you and I hunted together. There, I guess 3 weeks ago now, maybe, or going on 2 weeks, something like that.
2 weeks, not last week, but the week before.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And I did get a chance to sneak out last weekend just for a quick evening hunt. I didn't get out in the morning or anything, which was fine. Went to a new piece of public ground. It has some promise, from what I could tell just from the bit of scouting I got to do. I'd like to spend a little bit more time there. My fear is that it's not a big parcel, and my fear is that it's going to be pretty well overrun. I mean, even during archery season, late season, I think I saw 4 vehicles, and then where I parked as I was getting ready to walk into the woods, another guy pulled up and
nice.
Flagged me down, wanted to see where I was going, because he has a stand back there somewhere that he didn't want me to walk up on it. I didn't want to walk up on it either, just because if he was going to go sit there, I didn't want to be sitting tree to tree with each other like, hey buddy, how's it going?
Didn't want to be that guy. Listen, you get this half, I get the other half.
Yeah, you look at the front, I'll look at the back. And, so I'm just a little afraid that it's going to have some extensive pressure on it. So that, and I saw some areas where there were some things left in trees from previous hunters, and some game cameras and stuff like that. So I think it gets hit pretty hard. So I might be scratching that one off my list, but it's better to learn that now than later, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. When you're actually going knee deep in, trying to get the job done.
Yeah. It was just nice to be back out, for one more sit. I did see a red fox, so all was not lost. Yeah. So
very nice.
Yeah. But this weekend was a celebration of my wife's birthday weekend, just a couple months late since I hunted the rut for her birthday.
So totally relevant. I mean, this is deer hunting. We're talking about it, and super relevant that you hunted the rut over your wife's birthday.
Yeah. So we had we had dinner. She got her belated birthday dinner. We did go do a little bit of shopping. She always, it seems like for her birthday, she likes to take me shopping, and which is fine, I guess. I'm not quite, I don't understand it, but I say sure.
Is she taking you shopping for her, or she's literally taking you shopping for you, like to get stuff?
Literally taking me shopping for me, and likes to pick out clothes for me.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Which, hey, it's typically work clothes, which I'm fine with, because I am color challenged when it comes to matching things. So
I just see camo.
Yeah, no, it's like my wardrobe that I wear to work on a daily basis. So for everyone out there listening that doesn't know, I work. Phil and I both work in the advertising agency world. So dress code at work for the most part is pretty loose. It's like, I wear jeans most days and like a pair of slip-on Vans and a t-shirt or a flannel shirt, and that's about it. It's like when I'm in the office, it's not a big deal. Now when I go to see the clients, I have to put some real pants on and like a nice shirt and some nice shoes and
real man stuff.
Yeah, gotta be like a real functioning adult, which is it's marginal at best, I guess you could say. So for those days, I usually wear clothes that Megan has purchased for me because those are the only ones I know that match. And the funny thing is like they probably think I have them all like labeled or something, because when I go, it's like I wear the same pants with the same shirt like
This is Tuesday attire.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I know these pants go with this shirt because she told me that once before. So it's like I never wear another pair of pants with that shirt, like because I know that works. So yeah, so she wanted to go get some other stuff. So we did that, and then I posted this on social media last night because this was kind of the thing that ended the shopping spree, which was she said that she's like I think you would look really nice in a sweater vest. And I just looked at her and I was like, what? She's like, yeah, you look really good in a sweater vest. And I was like, that's funny. I didn't know Sitka made sweater vests. And that was the end of the shopping trip. So then I took her to a fancy dinner.
I hope and then you found $5 because you always have to, that's the cap of the story is that you found $5.
No, but I did get one cool thing yesterday. So one of the things I've been doing a little bit lately, and we'll get into this when we get into the more hunting-centric portion of this podcast. And for those that are listening, I promise we're going to get there. For those of you that haven't dropped off from our life update here, I've been little by little starting to pick things up for the Montana September elk hunting trip.
Yes.
So
yes.
I did manage to get a pair of boots because I've been kind of scouring the internet reviews and trying to find the pair of boots that I'm going to get. And so I finally broke down and went to REI yesterday, and so I could try some on just because I don't trust buying boots unless I've put them on my feet and like walked around a little bit. It's like I never get
right.
They never seem to fit when I buy them online. So I picked up a pair of boots and then promptly came home and I looked on Amazon and realized they were $80 cheaper on Amazon. So today I promptly took them back and bought them on Amazon. So I knew that they fit. So I'm pretty stoked about that. So now I can start wearing them to do some scouting and
nice.
start to
them in a little bit.
Yeah, get them broken in before I start laying the miles on them in the mountains in Montana. But so I think talking about our weekend update, the one thing I think we should maybe dive into before we get into the to the meat of our conversation is Phil and I finally went on our very first hunt together 2 weeks ago out at Phil's parents' property, which was awesome, man. Thanks for taking me out there. It was I had a blast, and we actually had a little bit of fun there in the evening hunt. It started off a little weird.
It only took all day.
Yeah, I know, right?
It was surprisingly cold that day.
Yes, it was.
It was like you went out. Like for me, I went out and I'm like, yeah, it's not that bad. It's tolerable. But it was just one of those days where it just kind of crept up on you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there, and in hindsight, I should have taken you up on those heat packs.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Those were choice. I'm not ashamed to admit. It's like I don't use heat packs, hand warmers and stuff very often. But that was a day where I was not ashamed to throw a few of those in my boots and a couple of those in my pockets, and even went to the body warmers where I adhered one to my midsection. So
right.
Yeah, I was all heat padded up, but it was a good hunt. I mean, it started off a little weird in the morning where we had a guy walk 30 yards in front of me by my stand. I gave him a little wave. He gave me a little howdy do. And then 15 minutes later, I had a guy walk his dog and pass me right behind my stand at 30 yards. So that was how our day started.
That's funny, yeah, because I saw both of them. They basically came by me before they blew you up. And it was just funny hearing about your interaction after I literally had the same exact sort of encounter, especially with the guy with the dog. It was so weird.
I don't know what he was doing, man, because he hiked up on the ridge like a good ways away, and then he did a little walkabout where he turned back around, and then he actually had to cross the stream, and he honestly almost ate it in the stream, which would not have been good that day because that was cold. Yeah,
no, I mean, thinking back on that he kind of came through and blew up both of our spots, I kind of wished now that he ate it in the stream.
I mean, he was. I would have laughed if he would have went into the drink. I'm not gonna lie, I would have had my chuckle, but yeah. I probably would have helped him crawl out of it most likely.
Yeah.
If it looked like he was struggling,
Sure.
It's like,
yeah.
But I will say that the day got better. Well, first off, man, your dad's awesome. like his dad, Phil's dad came out, when we took a little, when we took a little break at lunchtime, we came out, sat on the tailgate. Your dad hooked us up with some nice hot coffee, and just sat and we lamented the Steelers and anything else we could think to complain about. We sat and complained for about 2 hours, and it was awesome. Your dad rules.
Yeah, he's good people. Mm-hmm. He's definitely good people.
And then we got back into the timber, and this is where it got kind of good. I mean, it was slow going, and then I all of a sudden heard a crash and thought that you had shot something. So I was waiting to see something run by me. Because Phil and we were a couple hundred yards away from each other, but close enough that I could hear, and it sounded like deer coming, and then I didn't see anything, and so I didn't quite know what was going on, and then I felt my phone buzz, and pretty much knew then at that point you were texting me, and then just kind of prepared myself, and we got a little late day action there.
It was good. It was exciting. I found myself in a bit of a conundrum that we can certainly get into a little bit later in terms of when to draw, what position to wait for the deer to get in. It was a tough scenario. I think it might have been my mulligan, and I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but it might have been my mulligan. That and another situation earlier this year, but we'll definitely dive into that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and I would have definitely wanted to take a mulligan that day too, because the same thing that happened, kind of with you was
right.
Funny story is Phil and I literally saw the same deer, and the same buck, and we both had some opportunities, and we both managed to. It wasn't anything necessarily that was our fault. It's just it's bow hunting. It's the circumstances. You're in close quarters, and every little move and every little sound and every little everything kind of counts in those scenarios. And we just didn't put all the pieces together that day. But it was still a great time. It was awesome to see some action. It was awesome to see a buck in late season, to be quite honest with you. You know what I mean? Because where your property is kind of situated, there is a food source in the one area, but it's not like it's like crazy ag land in that area necessarily. You know what I mean? As far as like just row crops after row crops, from property to property to property. So it's, you have a nice little section of bedding there on that property that I think is pretty dynamite, actually. In my opinion, I know that we've talked about doing some enhancements this spring or fall to it, which I'm looking forward to helping get into.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge plot, but I have relatively good success year in and year out with doing. I mean, quite honestly, I've been doing kind of the bare minimum in terms of maintenance, and it's been successful. And I know that you took a look around and identified a couple of key areas where there's some food plot potential, and I mean that I think is only going to exponentially increase the chances of a successful hunt. So it's been a good setup for the past couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, what do you think, Phil? Like what I kind of thought we would do today with our BS session here is, we haven't had a chance to really catch up in a while, and this is probably a little late. Unfortunately, fortunately, depends on how you want to look at it. We've had some great folks come on the past, I guess 2 months. We really haven't had time to do a, resolution or a look back or a New Year's, if you will, podcast. And so I kind of thought maybe today we would kind of go through that and do a little bit of reflection and then a little bit of foreshadowing, if you will, into 2017, if that tickles your fancy. And I thought maybe we might start with just the highlights of our 2016. And I know we've talked about our rut vacation and stuff like that. So I was thinking maybe we just kind of keep it high level and talk about what the good parts of our 2016 season was. What do you think?
Yes, sir. I'm down.
All right, cool. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to do the honors? But before we dive into 2016, let's hear a word about our partners at Exodus Outdoor Gear. Today we'll hear from Exodus customer Chris Apfelstadt. Chris shares why it's important that he supports a company owned by hunters and how Exodus is as concerned with his success as a hunter as they are their own business success.
It's very important to me. I have a strong entrepreneurial spirit, and I've never had a boss my whole life. I've always owned my own business in some aspect. When I learned that there was a company in the U.S., specifically in Ohio, that was making trail cameras and really had their mindset on a quality camera, I was excited and eager to try it out. The price point at first, scared me a little, just because you can get trail cameras now for $25. But when I first received the product and, just opened the package, you could see the sense of quality without even taking it out of the box and how the packaging is made, and that they really took care in all the little details. The fact that it's made by hunters is, an added bonus. So I probably would have still purchased one, even had it not been hunters. But that just, adds to it. I really like the customer service side of it, and the guys were interested in my success as a hunter, and we could talk about, not just the technicalities of me buying something, but how I'm going to use it. And, they continued to check in on me. And so I like that part as well.
And that, folks, is an Exodus experience. It's nice to know that there's a camera company out there that stands behind their products and supports the everyday hunter. If you'd like to learn more about Exodus trail cameras, visit them at exodusoutdoorgear.com. And now back to the show.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think, because I want to kind of wrap up my 2016 season, not just from the perspective of the experiences that I had in the field, which I think were great. I had a lot of good experiences in the field, but I also want to tie in how much I've learned over this past year, field and not field. I think, one, being a part of this podcast was a great opportunity to talk to a lot of just awesome and experienced and knowledgeable folks in the hunting industry, and just being able to pick their brains. And really I even at this point feel like we're still just kind of scratching the surface in terms of understanding how whitetails move, how their patterns, what their tendencies are, how to be a good hunter. I mean, it's been a great year from that perspective. But looking back to my experiences in the field, I would definitely say one of my most memorable hunts was probably with you, this past one, because I think it's just kind of the build up to it. We've been talking about trying to get out in the field, trying to go hunting for a while now, and it finally happened, finally came to fruition. So that was definitely, I think, one of the highlights of my past year.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my highlights of this year from the hunting perspective was getting out with you, because, again, just like you said, it's been a long time coming. We've been buddies for, longer, obviously, than we've had the podcast and so forth, and it was just nice to be able to hit the timber with you, and your folks are great. Last funny story, not necessarily a highlight, but we get there and say, I've met Phil's dad one other time. And I get to the house, and I forgot to tell this at the beginning, but this might be a highlight. I get to the house.
I think it's a highlight.
Yeah. I get to the house, and it's a lot closer than our family farm, which is 3 hours away, right? Your folks' place is about 45 minutes from my place. So yeah, I get to your house, and it's early in the morning, and I get up and I'm having a cup of coffee, got my travel mug of coffee, and I'm pounding it on the way there, trying to get the sleep out of my eyes on the way to your parents' place and stuff. And then I get there and I hop out of the truck, and I'm like, man, I gotta go to the bathroom. You're like, well, hit the tree line, because there's a tree line right there. But I'm like, oh, the tree line ain't gonna cut it this morning. You're like, oh. I'm like, yeah. So open up the garage door. We walk inside. The dog's bed is right inside the garage door when you walk in to go into like the washroom. So I trip over the dog bed, right, and about go do a face plant into the dog bed.
Day's over.
Yeah, managed to make my way into like the hallway. You flip the light on. I see where the bathroom is, and I hop into the bathroom, and you head back outside, and the alarm, of course, goes off whenever you open up the door and stuff like that on our way in. And so, thinking it might wake your dad up. So I'm in the bathroom, finishing up, come out the door, go to open up the door, and there stands your dad in the hallway. He sees a strange man walk out of his bathroom at like 4:30 in the morning. And my response was like, hey, man, what's going on? I'm like... And I was like, that's pretty much it. It's like, I'm never going to be hunting here again. His dad's going to hate me. Like, he doesn't know who I am. Here's like some strange bearded man walking out of his bathroom at 4:30 in the morning that just, defiled the bathroom. Yeah, I'm never going to be invited back. But, your dad, of course, graciously invited me back and told me to come back anytime, that I was more than welcome to spend time on the property hunting there, which is, obviously very nice of them. So I appreciate you taking me out there.
I gotta tell you, Clint, I'm not sure what I what I appreciated hearing more, your encounter in the field or your encounter in my parents' house.
Yeah. I mean, the bigger catch was certainly in the house. You know what I mean? Like that was a big to do.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, but no, I thought what you said was pretty. When you were kind of talking about your highlights from 2016 was pretty spot on. They're kind of twofold for me too. I mean, one has definitely been the starting of this podcast. This year, the blog of course kind of preceded the podcast, so it's I guess the blog has been up for going on almost 2 years, and this podcast will be a year old I think when we hit toward the end of July. So we're not quite a year old yet. But just, I mean, not just like what, the stuff that we get to learn doing the podcast, and not just getting to meet the guests. Cause I mean, of course the guests are great and stuff like that, but it's all the folks out there that listen, that I get to engage with on social media, and start to create friendships with and stuff like that, cause there's a lot of folks out there that I talk to, on a pretty regular basis that are just, great folks, great hunters, great woodsmen and outdoorsmen and women, because there's plenty of ladies that follow as well that I, engage with.
For sure.
Which is nice to see as well. And I certainly appreciate those relationships. One, hopefully soon, if I can ever get my rear end in gear, we had a hunter profile podcast that we did with Charles. That was actually in November that we did it. I just haven't found time to finish the editing to get it live. And Charles, if you're listening, I'm sorry. We'll get that out as soon as we can. You can, when we do see each other finally, you can give me a couple lashings for that. But Charles is a great dude. And we had him on, and he's got a really interesting story. And it's meeting folks like that are awesome. They're just out there doing it every day. They don't have TV shows. They don't have, endorsements and stuff like that. It's just normal people doing normal everyday hunting stuff. And it's awesome to hear, about them and get to kind of get a glimpse a little bit every now and then of what they're up to. It's like I learn as much from the folks online as I do anybody else, just watching the things that they're doing and experiencing. So I'm very much appreciative of that. And that's definitely one of the highlights for 2016. But if I'm thinking about it from a hunting perspective, I mean,
well, I know what your highlight is. I mean,
right.
Without saying, I think.
Yeah, I won't, beat a dead horse, so to speak, but definitely the trip to Ohio for rut was the top of my list as far as the highlights. It was by far one of the best hunts I've ever had in my life as far as like whitetail is concerned, and got the job done, which is great. Hopefully my mount will be coming in not so distant future, which would be great. But it's funny because that 2016 rut hunt in Ohio was not just like a highlight for me. It was almost like a begrudging highlight, if I could say it, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm a malcontent or not appreciative of the opportunity that I had and all the stuff I got to see, because it was amazing and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Right. But because I tagged out, great problems to have. I didn't spend nearly as much time in the woods this year as I have in years past. Because I got it done. I went out a couple times in early season, and just like everyone out there listening, it's like I'm a regular dude that works a normal 9 to 5-er, and I try to get out on weekends and take some vacation time to do extended hunts and stuff like that. So I took a lot of time off there around rut, and I went in third day in. I was tagged out, and I pulled the camper to Ohio, so I had to stay. While my other buddies hunting. It's like not like I could just pull out and be like, hey guys, I got my deer, let's get out of here. Too bad you guys didn't get anything. Yeah. I got a tag to Phil.
You better Uber back.
Yeah, I got a tag to Phil in Pennsylvania yet. You guys figure it out, I'm out of here. There's no way I was going to do that, of course. And then Tate, of course, took one, which was probably like the second best highlight of 2016 was the fact that I was able to put Tate in the same tree that I killed out of, and he took a nice 8.2 on the same trip, which was awesome. But yeah, I definitely didn't get to spend as much time in the woods this year as I would have liked. I think last year it was something like, for me, this is a lot of time. I think it was something close to like 24 or 25 days I ended up spending in the tree stand last year. And it's not bad for a guy who, works full time with a family and stuff like that. I was definitely on it this year. Not that I lost the fire to get out, but it was, if something came up on a weekend and I couldn't get out, it wasn't like I was like bummed out about it as hard, because it's like I already did what I wanted to do. You had
a great experience. You tagged out. Like it's almost like anything else after that is kind of bonus, right?
Right. Now, with that being said, it's like, for me, back at the farm at least, it's like, once that rut vacation hunt was over, like bow season was over in that area for me at least. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could have hunted out here. But it's also, my wife's super cool with letting me go hunt as much and as often as I would like to, within reason, of course. So I also kind of felt like, last year I took a lot of time. This year I had a lot of time. So I felt, once I tagged out, I should probably stick around the house as much as I can, just because I could really, you know what I mean? And spend some time with my daughter and stuff like that. So,
what's really interesting? It's like, this year, I think this year I got out a decent amount. I would say maybe average amount in comparison to years past. But even on the years where I get out, a lot more than usual, I still feel like I don't get out enough.
Oh yeah.
And like you said, I'm in the same situation as you, working 9 to 5, sometimes 9 to, not, past 5.
9 to
pass out next day. Yeah, exactly. It's tough. It's tough, and I gotta credit a lot of the people that really dedicate the time to get out continuously and consistently, because that's really the name of the game. If you don't get out, you're not gonna find anything. You're not gonna get anything, and it's crazy though. I always, even if I did get out twice as much as I did this year, I still feel like I didn't get out enough.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you
never get enough. You never get enough.
Right. The one thing I will say though is that part of, I guess, me not getting out as much this year is that I've definitely this year hunted smarter than I have in years past.
Right.
So, what I mean by that is I'm really kind of letting my intel, whether it's like, boots on the ground scouting whenever I'm looking, as I'm hiking into an area to hunt, or whether I'm using game cameras or whatever the case might be. I'm letting those things, I'm letting all those variables kind of dictate, when I'm going to hunt, because I do have precious little time to go do it. So I have to try to strike whenever the conditions kind of give me the best opportunity. Which is kind of why, I didn't make it back to the farm a whole lot this year. It's like, I think I was lamenting this point, a couple different times during the course of this, hunting season. It was just, I didn't have anything on camera telling me to go back to hunt. You know what I mean? Like all my cameras, I wouldn't go as far as to say they were completely dead, but there was nothing. There was usually always every year like one that kind of got me going, where I was like, yeah, that's the one I want to get after,
Sure.
But I didn't have that one this year. Like there just wasn't one that was calling my name, if you will. You know what I mean? And so rather than going in and busting stuff up and spending hunts, knowing that I probably wasn't going to get anything done, I chose to kind of save those days and wait and go to places where I did think I had an opportunity.
Like Ohio.
Yeah. It's like, the thing with that is I didn't know for sure that was going to get done. That was, one of those things where, did some scouting early on, and I read spent a lot of time with maps and stuff like that. And it was probably 50%, it was 50% preparation and 50% luck. You know what I mean? It was just, I happened to get into an area that's holding deer and that people don't want to go to because it's hard to get to. It's like, and I wouldn't have known that second part until this year. You know what I mean? It's like, it looked like a place that a lot of people probably wouldn't go to, but I didn't know that until I got there.
Right.
But, so with that, with those highlights, right, there's always some low lights and stuff. And I know that I don't want to necessarily get into each individual low light that we had necessarily, but, are there any things this year, from this year that you would have liked to have done a little bit differently, or that you think you might do differently going forward?
Totally. So I actually have two, and I go back and forth, and they're the definite low lights. I think the lowest one was the big 7-pointer that that I hit and I didn't recover. I mean, it doesn't even matter if it's a buck or a doe. If you hit it and you don't recover it, it's pretty much automatically the low light of the season. But in hindsight, kind of replaying the chain of events that happened in my head, I had this opportunity at this buck, probably I would say about 20 yards, where it was completely broadside and completely oblivious that I was even there. And I didn't take the shot because there were a couple of branches, not large branches by any means, just small kind of meandering, almost like vines, right in front. But I mean, aside from that, it was a fairly clear shot, and I passed on that shot to take, albeit a much harder shot, which I mean obviously didn't recover the deer. In hindsight, I probably would have taken the shot now. If I were to go back and do that again, I would have taken that shot. So there's that, and then I think the second one would have been the experience when you came out with me at my parents' house, and there was about 20 yards of clearing right in front of me, and there was a doe and an 8-pointer that was basically trailing the doe, and they were just meandering very slowly behind this brush that kind of came out into this clearing. And the doe was first, and the doe came out, offered me a beautiful 20-yard broadside, which I passed because I knew there was a buck behind her. The problem with that was the doe and the buck, once that came out, started coming towards me. And I opted not to draw before the doe came out because I wasn't sure how long it was going to be until the buck came out. So I wasn't 100% confident in if I had to wait more than 5 minutes that I'd still be able to hold for that long and get off a good shot within that time. So I waited. The buck came out then, but by that point the doe was about 10 yards away from me and facing me. And when I tried to draw on the buck, which was again broadside 20 yards, the carbon fiber arrow mixed with the whisker biscuit, a little bit of a kind of scratch, and the doe busted me, which then got the buck going. And that's actually what you heard when you heard the crashing. That was them taking off.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought it was I thought either you shot, or then once I didn't see anything come like blistering by me in one way, shape, or form, then I thought maybe it was a branch that had broken and fell. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely, that one you definitely want to do something a little bit different there. Are there any different tactics you would want to try next year that maybe you didn't get to employ this year?
Or we've pretty much for the most part hunted the same general areas. And I say we because I have another buddy back home who hunts partly on my property as well as another property that he has access to. We typically hunt in the same stands. I think I would probably try to move around a little bit more. Right. Maybe get the climb route, get across that creek out back.
Yep.
And on that other side, because I did see a lot of movement back there. Mm-hmm. When I was in the stand that you were in, actually, earlier in the season, they would come down and kind of follow the creek bed. So I would definitely do that a little different. I think in that situation with the buck the buck following the doe, I probably would have, and I mean it may not have been successful either way, but I probably would have drawn back before the doe came into the clearing and tried to hold there and wait for the buck.
But you might still be holding.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, I know. I mean, after every year, there's always, hindsight, of course, is always 20/20, right? There's always things you think about differently, which, hopefully you get to improve upon, going into the next year. For me, I think there's really like a handful of things that I would like to have done differently, and we'll look to try to do differently next year if opportunity presents. The one is just more of an overarching, I guess, approach, which I'm learning because I did this more this year than I have in any other years, but still needed to work on it, and that is just having patience.
Right.
Sometimes I blew 2 opportunities this year because of lack of patience and just not reading the scenario correctly. And I mean, look, you can be, the best archery hunter on the planet, and you can still read scenarios incorrectly and think that they're going to come through this hole where you have a shooting lane, and then all of a sudden, the last minute, they change course or whatever the case might be.
Yes, sir.
My impatience got the best of me in Ohio on the Friday before I tagged out. I could have tagged out a day earlier on a really nice deer, but blew that opportunity because I grunted, as he was approaching, or after I had grunted him in already. I just didn't see him because he came quiet, and grunted again without checking my surroundings, and that was just me getting lost in the moment.
You just busted yourself, right?
Yeah, and not being patient, and waiting to make sure that I understood what was taking place around me before I made my next move. Which I won't say that I'll never do that again, just because sometimes you do get caught in the moment. But I would like to think that hopefully in the future that I'll do it less than I do now. And then the other one was out at your place.
Deja vu.
It was one of those things where there was that same buck that you saw that the doe and had busted you and took off. They ran in between you and I and just kind of hung up for a little bit, and I saw him coming, and he came to 15 yards and was passing behind a tree. And I probably should have drawn a little earlier, and just misjudged the route he was going to take. And, of course he busted me because I went to draw my bow back, and I have a QAD drop away, and the felt on the drop away when it gets really cold up against the carbon fiber shaft will make a small screeching sound. And usually I always put some bow wax on it before I go out to hunt, just to kind of keep it greased up so I don't get that, because I noticed that at the archery range, and so I knew that in advance of cold days, and I usually always put a little grease on it. Just forgot to before you and I went out to hunt, and that is one of my other things to do differently, which is just to make sure I continually check my gear before I go out, because I do really good about that early in the season. And then as the season kind of goes on, it's like I probably slack off on that. I mean, my scent regimen and stuff, I still kind of keep up with all that, and I'm diligent about all that stuff. But just like the little things, like checking to make sure that my fletchings are all turned up the right way in case they've gotten turned, or make sure that my broadheads are all tight, making sure that my drop away isn't going to screech as it goes across my arrow when I draw back. Just little things like that I usually always check, and as the season goes on, I get kind of lax about. So just being a little bit more diligent in the details for me. And then almost kind of similar to what you said, man, is the learning experience for me in Ohio big time was, I have a climber and I found a tree to get into, but I really need to be a little bit more mobile. And it's really, for me, it's switching, still using the Lone Wolf climber, but really kind of switching up to the, probably something, one of Lone Wolf's more portable hang-ons and sticks, to be honest.
Right.
I could get away with about the same poundage as far as weight's concerned, and it gets me into more trees, because especially as I'm kind of, looking to get a little bit more into public land hunting, as it seems to pique my interest more and more. I need to have that versatility to know that I don't have to spend an hour and a half looking for a tree every time I go in, that I can kind of find the spot that I want to be. When I find the spot, I'll know that I can get into a tree. Which,
the sticks offer you a little bit more flexibility in terms of what trees you can get up. I mean, I've had that scenario play out a couple times when I have my Lone Wolf climber as well, and I find an area where I'm like, okay, this is a great spot, and I'm looking at trees, and they're all like, half of them that are large enough to get into, they end up splitting off about 6 foot up, or they have really large branches that I can't just break off. Break off in order to climb up with the climber. So I can definitely see where the sticks would be a little bit more versatile.
Right. And a lot of what I ran into in Ohio, and even on public ground out here around us, is just like everything is so viney that, you know what I mean? It's just like, and the trees are just gnarly and not straight. And it's like, I just need something to where I don't have to worry about finding the perfect tree. I just need to find the right spot.
Absolutely.
So it's being a little bit more versatile in that regard. And then the last one really is just, what I'd like to do differently, or I guess do differently going forward, or would have liked to have done differently more this year. And I started to do it, I guess, is trying to find those spots that are overlooked that may present as areas that don't have great deer sign or don't have great deer densities or whatever. And really kind of giving those places a chance, because, you know, honestly, it's the place that I hunted in Ohio. It's like, if you just did a quick scout and you didn't really pay attention, you'd probably walk by a lot of stuff that I happened to notice this trip. But there's plenty of times when I walk into the woods where I don't notice some of these subtle things that, you know, you kind of dismiss an area because it's like, well, no one ever hunts here, so there must not be any deer here. You know, but that's probably likely where the big guy's hanging out, because, well, everyone thinks it's not a great spot and there's no deer there.
There's no pressure. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
It's funny. Speaking of that, I was reading something that I saw, you know, our most recent guest, Dan Enfalt, post. There was a story about a kid. I don't even remember where he was from. It might have been Wisconsin or something, but he shot a monster. It was like in the 180s or 190s, and he was like 14 years old or something like that. It was the first buck he's ever killed. And, you know, and Dan wrote a little piece on social media about it, which is really kind of, I mean, hit the nail on the head. He was like, there's a lot of times you see these stories about these first time hunters going out, you know, or young kids killing these monster deer, you know, on these properties that, you know, they hunt with their uncles and their dad and their grandparent or the grandpas or whatever.
Right.
And the reason being is because they always stick the new guy or the young kid in the area that nobody wants to hunt. Everyone has all their tree stands and been hunting for 10, 15 years because those are the best spots, right? It's like they're not going to give the new kid the best spot on the farm. You know, they're going to stick him where nobody's hunted for 10 years because nobody wants to go hunt that area. It's probably up a ridge somewhere through a bunch of nasty thicket they don't want to climb through, you know. Right, send the kid up there. He can go up there and sit and be cold for the day, you know. He's got to appreciate being able to hunt, you know.
Yeah, good luck getting through those pickers.
Yeah. So, you know, and then lo and behold, it's like that's always the person that ends up just shooting a toad because, well, that area hadn't been touched in 10 years, and that's where the deer are comfortable, you know.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So, I mean, so those are some things that, you know, I think that we would like to do differently before we move on from 2016 fully. So give me like your top two things that you learned from this year. Like, what are the two things that you'll absolutely take away from this year into next year?
I think definitely one you touched on was kind of understanding the situation, like situation awareness, right? Understanding what's happening, and just have a better perspective. Because I think this happens to a lot of people where, in theory, in your head, you have a plan, and then the deer come, and your plan is just your plan goes right out the window, because your nerves, you're excited, whatever it is. I think it's just kind of understanding the situation a little bit better and trying to have a little bit better judgment and foresight. And the second one I would say, you know, the day that we both sat out as a true testament is the day's not over until it's over.
Oh yeah, man, for sure.
That's, you know, like, you know, I did see two doe kind of early. One was super early, so early that it was barely light and I really just saw a silhouette. And the other one was maybe 40 minutes later, and it was on a trail. It had already passed me. It was out of range. But for the most part, the rest of the day was we were skunked, and it wasn't until, you know, right before that evening started to set in that we started to see some action. And you know what? It was after that doe and buck spooked and ran off in your direction. That buck actually kicked up two more doe. Because I was watching that was the wild part. And they came, and I saw where he went. And it was this real thick brush area right in between you and I. I saw where he went, and then I see these two other doe kick up and start heading your direction. I'm thinking, oh, they're going to Clint. But yeah, the gist of it really is the day's not over till it's over.
Yeah, that's for sure, man. And what's wild is that those two does that were in there, like they were in there whenever I walked in. Mm-hmm. They had to have been, because I never saw them.
They didn't move.
Heard them,
they didn't move.
You know,
nope.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
For me, I guess what I've learned is, you know, for me, and I hate continuing to go back to the Ohio trip, but it had such an impact on me this year, just from a hunter's perspective, and not just that, but like also, not to get all hippy dippy here, but from like an emotional and like almost spiritual perspective had an impact on me. So for me, I guess what I want to learn from this year, what I did learn from this year, is just to have more gratitude and be more appreciative of the time that I do get to spend in the woods, and the opportunities I'm afforded, and the things that I'm afforded the opportunity to witness, I guess is a better way to put it. Everyone has so many days, to do the things they love to do. And I think sometimes we take those for granted, and sometimes, I know I put pressure on myself to try to get things done whenever I'm in the hunting woods. I put a lot of work into getting ready for the season and scouting and shooting my bow and all that stuff. And so, when the season comes, and especially, you do a podcast and you have a blog. And so it's like, I put some pressure on myself to try to get things done, because I want to be able to have interesting stories to tell and things to talk about and stuff like that. And sometimes that pressure, you just have to kind of remember why you're out there doing it. So the one thing I think I learned more than anything this year was just to have more gratitude and more appreciation for being able to be out in the woods and to do those things, which kind of dovetails into my next thing, which is, and I'm not going to go on a rant about it, but just having an appreciation and understand how fortunate we are to have the type of public lands that we have to hunt, and how important public lands are. I won't get into a huge rant about it, as I have a growing affinity for hunting public land. The whole public land movement, or to the movement in certain areas to transfer public lands to states, has kind of caught my attention. I won't go into great detail, because, to be quite honest, I'm just kind of a newbie when it comes to this stuff, and I'm not educated enough on it to really kind of get into the details to feel comfortable about giving my opinion in a place where other folks might hear it, and it may persuade or convince, or just give wrong information flat out, Right. So certainly don't want to do that. But I think it's just worth stating that, for anyone out there who's an outdoorsman, enjoys the outdoors, does anything on public land, whether you're bird watching, hiking, kayaking, fishing, hunting, whatever the case might be, it would be of the utmost importance, probably for you or whomever, to understand what is going on in that realm, and then specifically what your elected officials in your specific areas are doing to either facilitate or to try to mitigate the transfer of public lands. And I think at that point, I'll just kind of leave it at that. I don't want to get too far into it, but that is definitely one thing that has kind of been more top of my mind since some of my outings this year, is just the affinity for public lands and how important they are. And that we need to do what we can do, and everything we can do to keep them public and keep them available for access for everyone to enjoy.
For sure. Agreed. Well said.
Yeah. So that is my speech for the day, and that'll be the last one. So onward to
exhale.
And exhale. Have a drink of bourbon. So I think with that, the next thing I want to do is, like, I think the thing that it rolls into nicely is talking about 2017. And so let me just ask this: Are you excited already for 2017 for hunting season next year?
I was excited for next year after our last hunt, because I had a sneaking suspicion it was going to be the last one. I had ambitious hopes that I would be able to get out this weekend, and it just didn't happen. So I'm super stoked already. I wish it could be September already, but there's some family stuff I would miss if we just jumped that far ahead. So.
Yeah, you got a few milestones here in the next few months to tick off. Now, I'm right there with you, man. It's like right after we had our hunt, I knew I'd probably be able to get out one more time, and I try to not look too far ahead until I'm completely wrapped up with this year. Right. But I've had to start thinking ahead a little bit, because, of course, my elk hunt is coming up in September, and so I have to start, gathering some of the things I need to get for that, just because it's a different style of hunting. There's some different, gear that I'll need to do that. But also just the training aspect of it, and making sure that I'm in shape for it, which I tend to stay in relatively decent shape. I work out frequently enough, and so on and so forth. But I definitely don't want to get out there and be the guy in the group that is not, that's holding people back. So I'm kind of upping my ante for my workouts, but I'm absolutely looking forward to 2017, to the point to where, I've already kind of started planning my scouting dates to get ready to go. There's one cool thing that I got actually as I was getting things for the elk hunt. So I don't know if you've ever toyed around with this at all. I looked at it online for a while and didn't really get into it too much. And then I was talking to Eagleson, since I'm going to going to Montana with him.
Right.
And we were just kind of talking about GPSs and stuff like that, I guess, when I was home a few weeks ago. And he was like, "Do you have a GPS?" I was like, "Yeah, I got a GPS." And we were just kind of talking about it. And he was like, I have, whatever GPS that he has, the whiz bang, 30 million gigawatt, GPS that'll get you from here to the moon. Right. He was like, I spent a lot of money on it. He's like, I wouldn't recommend getting that. He was like, what I would do, he's like, is there's, this thing called Onyx Maps or whatever online. We're not affiliated with them in any way, shape, or form. This is, just I started using it and checking it out because he was like, look, he's like, I use it when we go out there, and then I use my GPS kind of as his backup. And my concern was like, well, what about cell service and stuff? And he was like, there's a mode you can go into to where you can download these maps to where your phone's still using your GPS. I don't understand the technicalities of it, but your phone is still using your GPS, but you don't have cell signal.
Interesting.
And so you can load the maps on your phone to where you can use it in airplane mode. So you can kind of see it's just that little blue dot like you have on your map, and it makes it really easy to kind of wayfind. Shows like topography features. It shows, topo lines. It shows different routes. There's all kinds of, it's like a GPS in your phone, and it's crazy. So I ended up picking that up because I was like, well, I'm going to get that. I was like, I picked that up, and then I got and you can buy it by state or you can buy it by like the entire US. Right. And so I just got the entire US because I definitely wanted Pennsylvania. I definitely wanted Ohio, and I definitely wanted Montana. And they're like $30 a piece per state, or you can get, for $100, you can get every state for the year. So I was like, well, I'll just get every state.
So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. In case I happen to go to Jersey or Delaware or Maryland or whatever to hunt, then I have, something that can help me out.
Who goes to Jersey? But
yeah, I don't know. It's close, so whatever.
No.
So the cool thing is like I've been using that a lot for PA, and there's I'm getting ready to start planning some scouting trips. And one thing that I'm planning to scout is actually there's a lot of state game lands back by our farm back home.
Okay.
Because, sometimes, like I was saying, it's like I don't see anything on our farm. It's really tickling my fancy. Or, my father-in-law will have some buddies down to hunt, and they might hunt it hard for a couple weeks or whatever. And so it's, I really don't want to go and hunt up busted ground necessarily. And there's the game lands down there don't really get hunted that hard because everyone around there owns acreage. Like, the cool thing about this app is I can literally go in and see like boundary lines for people's properties and can click on their name, and it'll bring up their tax information of like the property size and stuff. So I know where all where the public land boundaries are at, the game land boundaries. Government access land, I can look and see, the private land, boundary markers and stuff, and I can figure out, it'll tell me who owns that piece of land. I can click on it and tell me how many acres it is. So the cool thing is I did do a scout just a couple weeks ago down there and started looking at the game lands a little bit, the public land. And there's two areas that really caught my interest. One, I hiked and scouted the mountain was the first part. The next part is I wanted to scout the lower ground. But I really didn't know where any of the boundaries were because I knew there was private property as you get further into that land. And so I looked at this, and there's this one little area where you go down through like this really nasty thick cut stuff. You have to cross a stream, and then you go up the other side. There's, I don't know, it's probably 200 acres worth of ground that's completely like off the beaten path that you have to hike to get to, that backs up to this one guy's property who my father-in-law knows. And anytime he stops and talks to him, he always tells him about the huge bucks that he has in his back fields. Like he's always like,
stop bragging, you.
Yeah. And he doesn't really hunt. He goes out maybe, first day of rifle season.
First day of rifle season.
You know what I mean? He's not,
yeah.
He's just, he likes to hunt, but he's not out during bow season and stuff like that.
Right.
And there's this little nook of the state game lands that backs right up to his property. So, and the only way you can get into that little area is you have to have access, either walk from where I'll be walking, which is going to be a hike across the stream and then up the other ridge, or you have to have access from one of either this guy's property or his two neighbors' property are the only ways you can get in.
So are you saying you're going to ask this guy for permission?
No, I don't want anyone to know that I'm going to be in there. So I'm going to take the long way around and hike in from the other side and
Fair
just
enough.
hike through the public land and cross the stream and try to figure out where I'm going to do that. If hopefully there's a low spot or have to fashion something to get me across that.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm going to go scout that here in February. So I'm pretty pumped, man. I'm already setting up like some scouting trips, and I'll be going to Ohio in April for the beginning of their spring gobbler season to do a spring turkey hunt and a more thorough scout of the area I hunted this year. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped. You got any scouting plans?
Yeah, so I know I definitely want to get out a little bit, not necessarily like into where I typically hunt. I want to go a little bit further. Which has kind of been it's been out of my comfort zone because it's been so convenient to hunt where I've been hunting. I want to go a little bit further because although I don't feel like there's a lot of pressure where I hunt, I want to go to where I know there's no pressure.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's really in kind of thinking about, you were there. It's kind of just across the creek and up the ridge a little bit further. But I definitely want to go up there and see what I can find up there. It's actually been a couple of years since I've gone that far and taken a look. So I want to go up there. I think also, so I know that you talked about, and you've talked about a lot, and even today, that you're going to Montana for an elk hunt. I'm super jealous. But I do think that I'm going to put in for the PA elk hunt.
Nice.
And it's a lottery, yeah. So I mean, I'm not expecting to be drawn first year. But if that is the case, I think I wanna head up to North PA to kind of check out the area before I go out. I mean, I certainly want to make the best of it if I do get if I do get a tag. So
Right.
I think in terms of scouting, that's definitely at the top of the priority list.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, truth be told, man, it's like I've been lost in Topo maps and online maps for like the past couple weeks, just scouting, doing some, virtual scouting of all kinds of areas. I know you and I talked about scouting some public land around here to try to find some other areas to hunt and stuff, so I'm definitely looking beyond the stuff that's back home. Cause one of my goals for this year is to definitely try to get some more land around here that I can hunt, whether it's public land that I feel really good about that I go scout, or whether it's literally going to knock on some doors of some farms up in like the Bucks County area that's not too far from my house and try to get on a couple of those farms to hunt to get some access.
Word.
We'll see how that all shakes out. I did have some news today, however, that my dad just purchased a property back home too.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be scouting that. I'm going back. Just, the bummer is it's 3 hours away. So
Right.
I got a lot of land to hunt that's 3 hours away. So
As you know, it's tough. 3 hours is like, it's just a little bit out of that range if I can go up for the day sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely do it, because the bummer is there's no Sunday hunting in Pennsylvania. So when I leave work on a Friday, it's like I hunt Saturday and I come back Saturday night or Sunday morning, so it's
Right,
like I
right.
do the trip often enough to hunt a day. But yeah, he bought some mountain ground in a pretty decent area that at least for our area back home is known for having decent deer. So yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting up with him in March and scouting that area. He's gonna break ground here, not this spring, but probably next, to build a cabin on it and stuff like that. So
Nice.
yeah, you'll see that place here sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get
Okay.
you back there to check it out and maybe
Yes, sir.
sling some arrows around. But
We
Other
can
than that-
slang some arrows.
slang some arrows around. But other than that, man, it's like the only other thing I'm doing is beyond that is I'm kind of getting ready for this elk hunt little by little. Got my workout plan going good. Ran a good 3.25 miles today.
Boom.
Yeah, it hurt.
It's like a solid 5K.
Yeah, it was a good run. I usually do that once a week, and then I get other cardio stuff in during the week. My new thing is working out with a weighted vest on, and that's just dumb. Like,
how's that doing for you?
it's brutal. It's terrible. It's like I'm in pain every day right now because I'm just not used to it. It's gonna help, but it's not nice in the morning when you get up from work and you get up for work and the first thing you do is strap a weighted vest on and you're like, hey, why don't you just like work out till you puke? It's a good way to start your day.
Well, yeah, basically. How else do you start your day?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not from being hungover now, at least, I guess.
Touche.
Yeah, but the only other thing really, man, is some shed hunting. I'm gonna try to do while I'm back home for the scouts and so forth.
Word.
Yeah, I mean, I try every year. I've yet to find a shed. The next door neighbor farmer found one last year in his tractor tire. So his
Nice.
tractor has more success finding sheds than I do. That's
Yeah, but I bet that was an expensive shed find.
Yeah, that was about a $500 shed right there.
Yeah.
$600 shed.
That's more than a mount.
Like he was like, I found a shed, and I was like, oh, no way, and he was not nearly as happy as excited as I was.
Let me see.
He was like, yeah, it cost me $500, and I'm like, what? Like, why are you buying sheds?
Yeah.
And then he explained to me that he ran over it with his tractor and it put a hole in it, and so.
No.
Yeah. So
That's a shame.
But I think with that, man, if there's nothing else to chat about or discuss, I think that that might be a wrap for the day.
Yeah, I'm a little bummed. I'm a little bummed right now. It's kind of the postseason doldrums.
Yeah.
But certainly excited for next year. Certainly excited for the people that we're gonna have on in the next coming podcasts. It's been a pleasure being a part of this. It's always awesome to talk and interact and pick everybody's brains, with everybody that comes on, because there's always a different perspective and there's always a different angle to look at things, and it's been a privilege to be able to see and learn and talk to some just awesome people along the way. So definitely excited about that.
Yeah. I mean, the folks that we have on are great. I thoroughly enjoyed chatting with those guys, and hopefully we'll have some more interesting guests come on here. I know we have a few set up that we're going to be knocking down here in the next couple weeks, which will be awesome. Of course, we've had some, a new partner come on, which has been great, and we're still, of course, have working with the folks from Exodus. Which reminds me, I wanted to make mention for any of you out there listening that are in the Pennsylvania area or going to be in the Pennsylvania Harrisburg area here on the weekend of I guess February 4th through the 11th. Our friends from Exodus are going to be at the Great Outdoor Show, the Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, at I believe it's the Farm Complex, or I think that's what it's called, the Farmers Complex, for about 7 days.
Yes, it's big. It's a big place. I've been there for a couple gun shows before.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a good time. I make a trip out there. I'll be going out there the weekend of the 4th. So anyone out there who's headed out there, look me up. I'll probably be somewhere around the archery hall, and that's where the folks from Exodus will be, and they'll have some new information. I can't let the cat out of the bag so much yet, but we'll certainly have Chad and possibly Matt on here in the not so distant future to talk about what's new with Exodus. So yeah, make sure you head out there if you're in the area and check those guys out.
Nice.
But I don't think we have anything else to share today at the moment. So I think if there's nothing else, I think we can call it a wrap. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. We'd just like to thank all of you for tuning in and spending an hour of your day listening to us talk about deer hunting. Very much appreciative for your time. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please feel free to subscribe to the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher, and you can also listen to us on Google Play. And if you're enjoying the content we're sharing with everyone, please head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star iTunes rating. We'd be very much appreciative of that as well. Also want to make sure to thank our partners at Exodus Outdoor Gear and Whitetail Institute of North America. And until next time, we'll see you.